Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Roundtable. I was out sick last week, so we missed it, but we're back this week. Lots to talk about, Worlds and other things. I'm joined in studio by Spellsy.
Hello.
And in Taipei, Travis. Travis, how is Taipei?
Hunter, it is hot and humid and miserable here. I really like the city, though, but it is also 12:30 in the morning, so apologies for any jet lag or any craziness that I exhibit on this show.
I know. How excited are you? First weekend of Worlds coming up. You're going to be live in person. Tripod, handy cam, covering the action. I mean, it's going to be a great weekend, right?
Yeah, no, I'm really excited about it. Strangely enough, right as we start the show, there's some weird Skype issues that start happening with bandwidth, so it's really funny. But no, everything kicks off tomorrow. I'm really excited about it. I've got all my one-man production crew stuff and packed up and ready to go.
All right. Well, we'll be dealing with our satellite delay, I guess, for this episode, but we'll just power through. So specifically this weekend, two groups playing, the first two groups, Group A and Group B. Group A, most people consider kind of non-competitive. We have two really world caliber great teams and two world caliber there at Worlds, but maybe not as good teams. The only drama, even potentially, is between EDG and Samsung White. Who's going to come in first place? Spellsy, thoughts on Group A?
Yeah, I mean, even when we were watching the groups draw and we saw Group A, we were like, oh my gosh, this is. I think somebody in the Reddit thread made the comment, this is the group of life. Like they're like, there's, I don't know. I think this one's going to be like, unfortunately, like one of the most boring groups. I think it is going to be the most boring group, except for, like you said, the EDG and Samsung matchup.
Yeah, Travis. Anything particularly about Group A outside of those two games between those two teams that we should be looking ahead to?
I saw members of EDG walking around the hotel today, and that's really the only thing I have to add. Like,
did they look fit? Did they look ready? Did they have their game face on?
They looked like they were trying to find the elevator.
Okay, that's not a great sign, but...
I think actually the most interesting thing we'll see from Group A is how EDG actually sizes up against Samsung. A lot of people have been talking about China and how they're like the second best and how if they can actually defeat Korea and all that kind of stuff. And this is, I think, where we'll see the first true test with EDG, like the most favored Chinese team by far after their like success, and then against Samsung.
Right.
White, who's also one of the favorite teams.
And I know, like our internal brackets, I assume are out by the time, or they'll be out by the time this airs. And I'm the only one who had EDG over Samsung White. Whether that's some kind of plan on Samsung's side or whatever, I do think EDG will come out first in this bracket. Hopefully that's a good sign for parity overall in the competition, even though almost all of us picked 3 out of 4 Korean finalists. Maybe this is a place where China can assert itself this season.
It'll be interesting to see because, I don't know, I think personally that China might not be like kind of size up to what they've been expected to as like maybe beating Korean teams and that kind of stuff. But I mean, with the lack of international competition, it'll be really, like, nobody really knows. So.
Total crapshoot. Okay, so from Group A, pretty boring, to Group B, going to have lots of drama. Kicking right off the bat, so this is TSM's group and SK's group. There are no NA or EU teams in Group A, womp womp, but Group B has TSM and SK. SK, where the ruling came out last night that Sven Skjern will be suspended for 3 games and fined $2,500 for choosing an inappropriate summoner name when he got to Taipei. Travis, they're going to be playing with a sub. What does this do for SK? I assume they're dead in the water, but you've been around a lot of teams dealing with subs over the years. How does a team like this deal with such a late change?
So theoretically, this should be an utter disaster, right? Like this should be awful. However, so first off, their sub, because apparently every team, I found this out today, every team has a sub with them. And their sub just happens to be the jungler for Unicorns of Love, who just got admitted to the LCS, so incredibly lucky on their part. And just based on past experience, like, this is League of Legends esports, like, the most random weird stuff happens. Like, I'm very tempted to just say they'll play suddenly better with their Unicorns of Love jungler sub than they would with the guy that they've trained with forever. It's strange. So, but I mean, theoretically, like, really, realistically, what should happen is, SK should be out of the running for this, and TSM, very happy. Loco Doco yesterday tweeted a video of Mario Party where sort of like the character was just doing nothing and they won.
Right.
So people go find that. It's kind of funny based on how Royal Club seems to be falling apart.
Yeah.
And then this Scaring thing, and I'm not hearing great things from TPA, so we'll see what happens.
That video is really apt because TSM has just gotten like a really lucky ride. I think like Cloud9 must be like kicking themselves for losing that Game 5 because they're in by far the easiest group for a NA or EU team to get out. There's no Koreans and one of the questionable Chinese teams with internal struggles or whatever we've been hearing about. And then now they also have SK like kind of kill themselves with this stupid mistake. So like you said, I think TSM is really lucky.
And who would have thought TSM, the model of stability and consistency, low drama, you know, like they've certainly had a very interesting year with a lot going on. It does seem to
watch,
be, yeah.
Everybody, anytime I mention anything that involves TSM, people either decide that it's me hating TSM because obviously they were blacklisted or me trying to suck up TSM, but you watch as like TSM's the only Western team that somehow makes it out of groups, and then like Loco Doco just goes crazy on Twitter about how great they are and stuff after all this. It's just going to be hilarious.
Well, I do have them as the only NA team making it out of groups, and I think the situation was set up really well, like you said, and is only getting better. Royal Club having problems, SK having problems, TPA is such a wild card, who really knows? But even if TPA is the only other good team, they still have a really good chance. It's set up about as well as it can be for a first place team to advance in this. So, like what happens, I assume TSM feeling really confident at this point. NA people should feel, even I feel pretty confident in TSM to get out of the group at this point.
I mean, the thing is that SK also has to be really mad at themselves because this was their best chance to get out too. Like as a third place seed, it's really hard to get out. Like if we look at all the other third place seeds, like LMQ, nobody giving a chance, and then the two wild card teams.
Right. They got the softest #1 seed. So
they had like they had a good chance to getting out too, and they just like completely screwed themselves over for a.
So do you agree with the decision? Was Riot correct in this? It's what I expected, but
I don't know. The one thing that I'm kind of annoyed about is that this like stupid, Riot obviously doesn't want to condone racism or anything like that. So that's why I think this punishment might be apt. But I think from a competitive standpoint, it's kind of disappointing. Just as like a spectator, now we're going to be missing SK's full lineup, and the whole groups are going to be now skewed or whatever, and like there'll always be an asterisk if TSM gets second place or whatever and gets through the groups. There'll always be an asterisk like, oh, they beat the handicapped SK.
Maybe. I mean, I don't think a lot of people had. That's true, I suppose, unless we have a X-Hazard type situation.
Yeah.
And Gilius just grabs SK and drags them forward into the next round.
Said.
Yeah, so I think that should be a tremendously interesting group. I would be shocked if TSM didn't make it, but I think there are a lot of potential results that wouldn't necessarily be surprising given everything. So much instability, especially. Anything's possible coming out of this weekend. So since last week, we would have done promotions relegations last week, but we missed it. Looking ahead now, there's been a bunch announced related to the expansion tournament that we'll see November 15th. Starting November 15th, 13 teams, a really complicated play-in system that'll eventually decide the 2 teams. A couple of rules in particular that have come out around this, sort of looking ahead to next year. So we know the dates. We know they've now defined the residency rules so that you have to have been somewhere for 24 months out of the last 3 years, and you have to be work eligible in the region you want to play in. And we have this new ringer rule so that pros can't drop down to expansion teams. Looking ahead to what's probably the start of Season 5, since it's happening that late in the year, what jumps out at you as this all has slid into place now for what we should expect next year, Travis?
I don't know. I mean, it's definitely interesting. It's kind of hard as I'm like right on the cusp of beginning Worlds to start thinking of what Season 5 looks like. I kind of gave Nick Allen some crap whenever I saw him earlier today being like, wow, this expansion tournament, which I figured would be pretty simple, looks a lot like the IPL 5 tournament that you ran a couple years ago. It's actually quite complicated. So, I mean, I'm pretty excited about it. It'll definitely give a lot of conversation, especially as, I mean, it's not really worth talking too much about right now, but the I Am San Jose or whatever event just got announced as well. There's going to be a lot happening in the off season, so I'm really looking forward to coming back from Worlds and getting my hands dirty, figuring out what Season 5 looks like, and what teams are going to be up to in the off season.
The biggest thing that I think will lead up to the expansion tournament is that it's really late in the season, and typically for the Worlds we've had a few patches that have just been almost nothing, just Riot saying like, we don't want to make the same mistake we made last year, let's wait on the patches. And so now you have to know, like, they're building up content and balance changes and all that kind of stuff that it's going to kind of explode after Worlds. And then so are these people going to be, is this expansion tournament going to be playing on this whole new meta of
whatever,
like where people haven't been
or
defined?
Whatever.
Yeah. And especially if, as we said, like, as we reported on a couple months ago, OG and Winter is rumored to be cut, and like, so like, will there be any like big tournaments for these metas to get defined? Or?
It'll be interesting. I mean, I guess it sets up well in the sense that we've seen a lot of LCS success is adapting to the various changes that happen during the season. The teams that do well in the expansion tournament will be the ones who hit the ground running with whatever the meta is in Season 5. We'll have new map, not that that affects the meta, but I mean, there's a bunch, both on content side and balance side, like a bunch of things that have been rumored, and whatever teams are going to do well there are going to be the ones that have, I don't know, had a stable roster over this long period in between relegations and the Challenger tournament, and are able to adjust as quickly to that meta. The only team that got relegated in NA, Complexity, Travis, do you expect them to stick together and really make a go of expansion and come out the other side?
Yeah, I think they will. I mean, expansion tournament definitely showed that, in my mind at least, like the bottom LCS teams are pretty close with the these expansion possibilities. Complexity, of course, going to 5 games, I believe. If my 12:30 in the morning craziness isn't setting in.
Right.
So I think that we'll definitely see some interesting things out of the expansion tournament. And I mean, we have the same thing happening over in Europe, so it should be pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I continue to be surprised by how small that gap is between the bottom tier LCS teams and the top tier Challenger teams. It seems like that should just be getting bigger and bigger and bigger as LCS becomes a better thing and a more systemized way to kind of develop talent and play against the top tier and everything else. But a lot of those series were competitive, not all of them, but a lot of them were. Certainly CLG's series was about as competitive as you can get and still stay in the league. Complexity series was pretty competitive. Unicorns of Love, we saw a lot of interesting champion picks, and mid Hecarim and top Poppy, and there was a lot of different things, but the series were closer than I expected.
Yeah, no, I think it's kind of interesting, like you said, that the LCS teams aren't that much bigger, because I mean, like, even some of these Challenger guys are at school still or whatever, and
no gaming house, none of that stuff. Yeah,
well, all the LCS teams obviously have all of that infrastructure.
I don't want to talk about this for too long because I could definitely rant about it, but I think if you look at the infrastructure that something like TSM, Cloud9, or CLG has, I mean, CLG almost getting relegated, so I guess maybe it's not that fair, right? But like what these guys are putting into compared to somebody like Complexity right now, like I don't know. I actually think that it kind of makes sense that some of these lower tier teams are having a lot harder of a time, because it's just, I really think that this year we're going to look back on it and see it as kind of like this year where NA and EU started to realize like what you can do to approach this game, sort of similar to what we've seen over in the East with Korea and that kind of thing. And we're going to see like, oh, these kind of teams at the top were kind of ahead of the game. So
yeah,
I don't know. I think it should be interesting.
No, I mean, I think that's an interesting suggestion. I just don't know, at least in NA, EG and CLG were in relegations. Both of those are big organizations with a lot of money to spend. I can't speak to the actual efficacy of their infrastructure. Clearly there were issues with Monty and some of that situation and some team chemistry stuff for CLG. EG had a lot of turnover this year, first year in NA. I'm not exactly sure what their coach/analyst situation was like. But those are big organizations to end up, 2 of the 4 biggest organizations in North America ended up in relegations. That's pretty significant.
there's certainly a difference between having money and knowing how to use it, right?
Yes.
So I think you can't just point and say like these are big organizations, they should have had the money.
Right. No. And I think if what we've taken away from this year is that it's not about having a gaming house or spending, having an analyst, quote unquote, that is checking the boxes of those isn't enough. They actually have to be good at their job.
Yeah.
That's really significant for NA. And if we figure out like how to start evaluating coaches, that moves the infrastructure forward. So we're past just like, yes, we have an analyst. It's a guy who is a platinum level player who likes to talk about the game or whatever, like someone like me being someone's analyst.
Yeah.
That would be bad. And two, like, oh, he actually has skills of some kind that we can measure, and we think that he's actually good at his job, whatever that means. So, nuts and bolts. Looking far ahead to Season 5, we've started to see the 4th place teams shuffle their roster some. Curse dropped KeSPA, and SKT blew up in Korea. So I guess that's the sign of the first real off-season moves have started. Sticking close to home, Curse has had a love-hate relationship with KeSPA kind of from the beginning. On again, off again, nearly replaced him last year, have nearly replaced him a bunch of times. Now he's gone for good. The Curse Academy bot lane certainly looked strong, so maybe that's where they're going. But where do you think Curse lands here? What kind of player do they need to look for? What happens, Spellsy? What does Curse need to do differently at that role than what KeSPA was bringing?
I mean, I don't know. I think actually KeSPA was filling the role kind of fine. Like they have Voyboy and Quas as kind of like the playmakers on that team, and like he was just kind of a
sneaky type.
Yeah, but I think I think with X Special, they have the ability to dominate. I think like X Special coming in really showed the strength of that team or whatever, and they might need to make like a move if they're going to be a first place team.
Yeah.
But I personally think, and KeSPA has kind of been this character or this player that you've said like, oh, he's consistent and good, but nobody's ever said like, oh my God, KeSPA is great. He's making all these crazy plays and that kind of stuff. And so maybe if they bring a playmaker or another high kind of skill ceiling and bring it under the tutelage of X Special, maybe he can come back. But I don't know what.
Travis, Curse Fabi, like what do they look for in this next round? Do they need a playmaker at that role, someone that's really stylistically different than what? Because the criticism on KeSPA has always been very kind of consistent but not flashy. Do they need a playmaker there?
I don't know, dude. Like it's so random that they just kick KeSPA
now.
And
yeah.
have, like, no replacement. I mean.
Yeah, I think that is true.
Yeah.
My good friend and occasional arch rival Richard Lewis over at Daily Dot has recently posted an article saying that they're looking towards who did he mention?
Forgiven.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
sure.
I don't really understand why they're. Well, it looks like the article was deleted from Reddit, strangely enough. But I don't really understand what the timeline is on this. It's kind of strange because as we all know, like our contracts and everything expire right after Worlds.
Right.
So it's kind of strange to just cut him randomly. There's something I'm missing here, but
I guess
it's very
frees
odd.
them.
Yeah, maybe
it frees them to look, and
yeah.
and then we didn't really talk about this, but with the new 3/5 rule, they're actually one of the few top teams in position to go get a foreign player in that role. Someone who could work for eligibility in the long run, but could walk in as one of their potential non-residents and play there. So maybe now, who knows, things falling apart in Korea, China having troubles in general, European stuff, they're in position to go get a foreign player to maybe take that role. Maybe that's the thinking now. You open the spot up so you have lots of time to talk to people, potentially try foreign players out or fly them over or other things. Maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I mean, I don't really know what you do. Like the question of, who do they put in that spot? I don't know if you know what you put there until you really have an idea of what that team looks like next year, and who knows are they only replacing KeSPA? Are they going to look to other places to replace? It's kind of interesting. It's just kind of fascinating to me that was kind of what broke the dam of, what we all know will probably be a rush of roster changes and that kind of thing in the off season.
There's a lot of news out of nowhere kind of last night, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
SKT.
SKT. I'm not sure what to say there other than, the criticism of that team all year is that Faker's been 1v9ing and somehow carrying them to 4th place anyway. It's a pretty dramatic change, though. But with sister teams, or sort of maybe no sister teams next year, maybe this makes sense. You blow up your 2 teams, you kind of mush them together, and you end up with 1 team at the end anyway.
Maybe.
And if Faker was the only part of that team that you wanted to keep, then you end up with 1 with him plus the 4 other guys. Certainly a surprise.
What was interesting that got lost in a lot of this is that they also recently cut some of their StarCraft players as well. So, I mean, maybe it's just like random timing, but I think a lot of people miss that. Also, CJ Piglet would be pretty cool.
CJ Piglet or Curse Piglet, potentially. Curse Piglet.
No.
Yeah.
I don't think he speaks any English like at all.
Well, okay, I'm just saying.
Yeah. But I think
Mad Life, especially because we knew Mad Life was looking to try to come over to North America based on reporting from Daily Dot that, like maybe if that's coming back in and things are starting back out, maybe those guys will just fall together.
Could be.
Well, I think it was interesting that they cut their full bot lane or whatever, rather than, I don't know, everybody has been criticizing Bengi a lot this season, and instead they've been criticizing Bengi and Pumandu, but they just cut the whole bot lane.
Yeah.
I don't know, I think...
people make cuts not always based on skill, sometimes based on attitude and stuff. Like, I don't want to speak to this because I literally have no idea, but I know Piglet is kind of like a rash, maybe brash would be a better word, person based on interviews and that kind of thing. I mean, maybe just internally they just felt like Bengi was a better long-term personality for the team.
Well, and I imagine you would go to Faker and say, and I know the Korean systems don't normally work this way, at least by reputation, but he's a star. So if you can ask him, who do you want, like Mock Noon, that whole team style, and say, like, who do you want to be there, what kind of players should we be looking for? He's going to be carrying any team he's on, he's going to be expected to be the star and carry. So you want a group that he feels comfortable with. It's dramatic, but it's hard to say, again, like, 4th place is no place. Like, if you're not at Worlds, you need to do something different. And we've seen how difficult it is to stay consistent. A year is a long time in the league, and no team has come back and defended their championship at all, like even remotely. So Fnatic didn't make Worlds Season 2, TPA didn't make Worlds Season 3, SKT didn't make Worlds Season 4. Like, there's been no defense. A year is a long time. You blow up your roster because rosters get stale, I guess. They get stale.
I don't know. It's so much... Like you said, people just blow up. Like, Thorn tweeted this, I think, and said that they were the best bot lane in the world 9 months ago, and now they're cut. Yeah. And that's just, like, really
skill vampires. I think there's no other way to explain it other than skill vampires. It does speak, I think, the meta is deceptively volatile, I think, and it's, like, so hard to pinpoint exactly what the impact is with champion pools and other things, but the easiest, it just seems like the meta changes, and it really shakes things up for teams. But I don't know. Okay, so staying in Korea, topically anyway, KeSPA started streaming on Azubu yesterday. I was following that closely. Flame peaked at 6,000 yesterday, 6,000 concurrent viewers, which is not a lot. I know they were streaming overnight. I have no idea how many people were watching. I don't know, not a great start in my mind, but it is really nice to see these streamers and take a look at what their situation is like. What struck you, Spellsy, on the KeSPA streamers? I
mean, I don't know. I think that from a content perspective, this is the one move that Azubu could do that can really draw like a unique content. Like, they've brought teams over, but like any one team, even a really popular team like CLG, doesn't have enough pull to kind of bring in like their unique niche or whatever, but I think this brings in their niche.
Yeah. Travis, I know you were sort of traveling during all of this. Had you been home or that? How excited are you? How excited should the community be about these KeSPA streamers? Did the results kind of match your expectations?
Yeah, this broke a little bit before I left, and then I was sort of tracking online today. People are kind of chatting about the numbers. The big thing for me is like, all right, you look at these numbers that you're seeing like 9K or whatever, and the question is, are these numbers that you're seeing, are they the beginning you're gonna build from these? Like as these players keep streaming, like these numbers will keep growing, or are these like the early hype numbers where people are like, holy crap, like this Korean player is streaming, let's go check out Flame or Mad Life or whoever, and then essentially the hype goes away. So which one of these do you think is going to happen? Because I think for Azubu, that's like, depending on your opinion, that's what decides whether or not this is good. Because in my hey, listen, I don't know what the business deals were behind this, but I don't think KeSPA jumps to force all their star players to stream on a network unless they're getting a fat check at the end of the day.
Yeah, I assumed...
I personally am of the opinion that these numbers are not like the beginning of a huge landslide of further views. I think that we'll actually see them decrease over time. This is based on experiences that I've had with the StarCraft 2 Korean pros and that kind of thing. I mean, I don't know. It's still kind of hard to say, but I would not be super. I'm not expecting these numbers to grow ridiculously over the next 6 months, and maybe 6 months from now I'll be embarrassed by that statement.
Well, I do think they're hindered somewhat by the players that people. There are some famous players here, but Faker hasn't started streaming yet, and the 3 best Korean teams are at Worlds, and so they're not streaming at all. So I assumed this was more of a peak, like given your options, I assumed this was a peak, that we'd see some big numbers first day because it's new, and most audiences in the West haven't seen this, and then we'd check it out and you'd see it peter down. So I was thinking like 30K, 40K, you know, and Azubu being like, hey, look at how many streamers, you know, like this is our best day ever, and it would kind of go slow down from there. And if this was the peak, this is a disaster, in my opinion. You have to hope, I guess, that it's the other one, that this is the slow growth. But Azubu has no history of sort of taking CLG and like slowly growing, or taking Curse and Fnatic. I just sort of forget that those guys are streaming, let alone like. So do we get another pop when Faker and the Worlds teams come back?
Possible. I mean, the thread was on Reddit and still didn't bring, I don't know, like only 6,000 viewers. But Matt Gunnan tweeted that the first day was better than he could have ever expected.
Holy moly. He has low expectations then. Because I assumed, like I was tweeting this, if it's 6,000 on Azubu, I assumed it would be 30 to 60K first day appeal on Twitch, which means you're like a 1/5 to a 1/10 the size of what Twitch would get. And they don't have to be equal, but that's like a big drop off for something that I assume you spent a lot of money on. KeSPA wouldn't come cheap. There's no reason for KeSPA to do this unless you're, like you said, Travis, unless you're spending a lot of money. So if this doesn't take off, yikes, yikes.
Yeah, I mean, no offense to Matt Gunnan, but that's I mean, just based on what I've seen, like when CLG went to Twitch, it's not like they had these big numbers and then they grew even bigger, right? Like the initial hype. Like, not to mention there's no LCS going on right now. Like, this is kind of the best time to stream.
Yeah, it's dead during the week.
Like,
yeah,
it's I don't know.
With Flame streaming yesterday, I checked. Twitch had like 9 people who were pulling, 9 league streamers who were pulling more than Flame was. Like on Night Blue 3 will outdraw the top Korean every night, every stream, constantly. Like that seems really weird to me. Like only Rengar, you know, like kind of the solo queue, one trick pony style streamers that are famous for a little while will outdraw the best top laner in the world and some of these other kind of crazy things. I'm not disappointed, I guess, but I am surprised at how low those numbers were.
Yeah. The one thing I will say is that at this point in time, in my opinion, all Azubu needs is like one big network. If they can get TSM, or they can get a bunch of streamers and put them sort of together like the main streamers or whatever, and put them side to side with the Koreans, like maybe that's it, right? But as it stands, like they need something else, and they need to get it quick so that they can start to build the ecosystem. Because the problem is they always have the foundation. They can't ever get the rest of the building built. So
well, they are in trouble because Fnatic, I assume you could have said, was one of those type of teams. Reckles always got, and SKT both used to get big numbers on Twitch, like reasonably big numbers. But they're at Worlds, so they're not streaming right now. So you don't get that synergy right now. Maybe they went too early. Maybe Azubu should have said, let's start this deal post Worlds when Fnatic gets back and we're in the lull in between things. We'll start with our world streamers and Faker and everybody and Fnatic at the same time and do our big push then. Maybe they work the kinks out now. I was surprised just that there was the Korean streamers are streaming in the Korean client, no surprise, speaking Korean, no surprise, chatting with their Azubu chat in Korean, but the English chat is like a afterthought, effectively, and it's hard for me to imagine NA audiences sticking to something that's a fully Korean experience.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be definitely a challenge. Like, I wonder if they're aiming for the Korean audience or whatever to be a competitor with Africa TV or whatever it's called.
That would be a nice expansion, I guess, but it would be giving up on NA in a sense. So, all right, well, a great weekend of action coming up. I'm excited for TSM and an NA team. I mean, this would be their first Worlds victory if they get out of Group B. That's exciting on its own, right? And
since season 1, I guess.
Since season 1.
He did well at season 1.
Okay. But so season 2, lots of hype. Season 3, they didn't advance at all. So maybe this is a good chance for them to advance for the first time in a while and kind of validate all of their roster shuffles and that kind of thing. So definitely looking ahead to this weekend. And we'll be back again next week. Travis, when do you transition from Taipei to Singapore?
So today is...
Well, it's now Thursday.
In my time.
Yes.
I leave on Monday. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday is the World's thing here. I leave on Monday for Singapore. So next week you guys will be talking to me from the wonderful country of Singapore.
Yes. We'll be looking forward to that for sure. Have a great time at the event this weekend. Follow all the coverage.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate everyone who follows me on social media and enjoys my content on ongamers.com.
All right, check out Travis everywhere. We'll be doing stats coverage. We'll be doing live shows. We're blowing it out for Worlds. So ongamers.com, lots of updates all day, enjoying the games and doing analysis in between, or in between days, as it were. So that's it, and we'll talk to you next week.